Now this is content.
Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the entire Democrat basically caucus in Congress literally bent the knee to George Floyd and to Black Lives Matter. Like, they quite literally did that.
And that was a bad thing?
I think it was a stupid thing.
It's you, Ling. It's you, Ling. I follow her on Instagram.
Are they filming us for like B-roll?
Stand by. That was intense. All right, here we go.
Okay, these videos are always good.
Hi, and welcome to our conversation about what it means to be Asian American. I'm Krishna. My parents came here from India. I was born here. So I identify as South Asian American or Asian American. And I just wanted to call out that, you know, we're talking about the largest continent on the planet with multiple countries, ethnicities, sub-ethnicities within it. So we did our best to try to get a diverse mix of opinions and backgrounds on this panel, but you can't get everyone's opinion. So as we start, I want to get a quick poll. How many of you guys think the term Asian American is useful? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got a couple 50-50s. What about if we were to add Asian American Pacific Islander? I guess I'm curious to hear why, and maybe
so
the way we can
confused.
do
What
that
does
is
this
going
question
around the
mean?
room and talking about who we are, where we came from, and what that term means to us, and what you think it might mean to the rest of the world. So,
I'm Yuling, and I would identify myself as an Asian American. I feel really strongly about being an immigrant. I'm first gen, or I say first and a half gen, because I was born in China, and then we immigrated to New York and then to San Francisco. And I think that like the term Asian American is complicated because it applies to so many different identities, ethnicities, and cultures. It's a helpful term when you don't really know what else to you kind of just like lump everybody into like one term, and I don't think there's any issue with it being Asian American and Pacific Islander either, because that's just more inclusive in my opinion.
so there's a sense of community amongst people from different cultures.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because like you can't really put it into words. It's applicable to such a wide range of things, and like, we're not a monolith.
It's complex.
Yes.
Yovan.
I was born in Manila, Philippines.
Interesting. And what does that heritage mean to you?
You know, I'm a little conflicted
Swag
because
Capino
sometimes I
gang.
just want to be American. I don't want to specify the fact that I'm Asian, but at the same time, it's like someone looks at you, they're going to say that you're Asian, so you say you're Asian American. I don't like the idea of separating the Pacific Islander just because for so long I was told I wasn't Asian, that I was a Pacific Islander. I just think it's all encompassing we are Asian.
Micah.
I feel very prideful about the Asian Pacific
Damn,
Islander.
you're fine as
I
hell.
live in San Diego now, but I'm originally
sorry.
from Honolulu, Hawaii. And I am so close with my family. Just growing up, it's hard to explain, but being from Hawaii, like the aloha spirit is real. Being around your family, having that common courtesy for community is just something that I'm really proud of.
And you feel like, as it relates to Asian American and Pacific Islander, these are two things that kind of go together in some ways?
Yeah, they do. They do.
How?
So the thing about Hawaii is that it's a really huge collection of different types of ethnicities, and there's a lot of Asian influence in Hawaii as well. A lot of different people who are there are from Korea, China, Japan, and I just consider them family as well.
Well, good to meet you. Tell me about yourself, Vince.
Genetically, I'm a quarter Italian, 75% Vietnamese, but I am really with Teddy Roosevelt on this one. I don't believe in the hyphenated American thing. I identify as American. I consider myself an American. Sure, genetically, I'm mostly Asian. I don't go around thinking I'm an Asian American, because I think that, especially considering the fact that America today is increasingly a more and more diverse country, which is what it is, the only way that's going to hold together is if people can, to some extent, all identify as being part of the same nation, part of the same creed to an extent. I mean, that's just the way I would.
I'm so sorry, man. But every white person does not consider you American. I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm just saying that because he's a conservative, and so he thinks that like everybody should be colorblind or something. Babe, that's not how it works.
Vish, you're up.
I'm 100% Hindu Indian American. I was born in Brooklyn. My parents are from India. I personally just describe myself as American. I find, like Vince said, the hyphenated American thing, I think it's by definition divisive when you're dividing the identity. I prefer to call myself American. I don't call myself Indian American, Asian American, though when people ask, like, oh, well, what are you? I'll say, well, I'm of Indian heritage.
I also feel like just calling yourself American, it negates kind of where you came from, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I think there is kind of like a divisiveness, but that's just because of like the history of America, the fact that we I'm sure we're like one of the only countries that like has to separate ourselves like racially and ethnically. So I think that's just a part of like the culture of the entire thing. But also the way that the way that they're describing it, it kind of feels like they don't want to be. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of feels that way. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much. But I feel like sometimes when people do that, they want to be a part of the in group, which is white people. They want to deny their culture and their heritage. But maybe for some people, it's not like that. I don't know.
So like my experience, my mom is from Japan. She immigrated to America. So I do truly feel that I am a part of the Asian American experience where, you know, at home, it's a Japanese household. It's a Japanese culture because I was predominantly also raised by my mom too. And then also we happen to live in America. And I think there is a very unique perspective in that. As well as I'm a proud Asian American, I'm a proud Black American too.
Yeah, period,
I'm a proud
power to the
biracial
people.
American. And I think there is definitely also a need for us to be able to say Asian American, especially because we are often seen as not American.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Enough. But then you go back to Asia and they're like, oh, you're so American. So it's just like, well, who am I?
Being between cultures in a way, or straddling cultures, being part of two cultures.
Yeah, being part of two cultures. I'm Asian, I'm American, I'm Asian American.
Well, nice to meet you. Joyce.
So I'm a Taiwanese Asian American. I identify as Asian American, but at the same time, I think the term Asian American and Asian Pacific Islander, they have to be separated because when we go to colleges and apply to get in, we're on different socioeconomic pathways. So actually the term Asian Pacific Islander would actually get you in more than someone does East Asian, because I believe now they separate the two.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think that's what we'll try to do today. But it's good to meet you. So I guess this is a funny question, but like, do you think the average American, when meeting you, would be like, oh yeah, you're Taiwanese?
No, they think I'm Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, but basically I'm Asian. They always ask where am I from because of the way I look.
And they ask like, where are you really from?
Yes, yes. And I'm like, always, I'm American.
I get that a lot too. Ellen.
Hi, my name is Ellen. I'm Korean American. I came from Korea when I was 8 years old, got on a plane by myself, not speaking a word of English. Didn't know white people were real. For me, it was huge culture shock. My parents had already immigrated, so I was joining them. I like to be identifying myself as a Korean American woman, and I recognize the importance of Asian American Pacific Islander. Definitions are always constantly changing as we as society constantly evolving. I don't like to just consider myself American because when anybody in this country looks at me, they don't just see American. They always see Asian first. Instead of using that as a thing that holds me back, I say it proudly. And it's taken time to accept my identity, to really know that that's sort of an umbrella term to open the door into the conversation. I know it's not possible to encompass all of us because Asia's so big, right? But in order for us to be seen and heard, we have to start somewhere. So I think it's a good term for that.
Ziad.
I'm Ziad. I use he, him pronouns, and I am Bangladeshi American, and I'm Asian American. The reason why I, was lukewarm about the term Asian American insofar as its usefulness is that I don't actually often refer to myself as Asian American, despite like fully believing that I am, because to Yuling's point, oftentimes I think people have a perception of what Asian American looks like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that leaves out South Asian. Sometimes that leaves out Central Asian.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I feel like when a lot of people think of Asian, they think of like East Asia instead of thinking of like Southeast Asia and South Asia. Like, you don't really think of like Indian people in America as like Asian. Like, it's not presented that way, which is probably why the term Asian American is so like complex, because it means a lot more than what it's presented as, I guess I should say. I'm not an expert in this because I'm not Asian, But I think that this conversation is going to be like super interesting, talking about like the model minority myth and Asian hate and all that. It's going to be interesting.
Parts of the world. Me personally, like I lean into my hyphenated identities, right? I am American and I am Muslim and
He's
I am Bangladeshi and I am
adorable.
Asian, right? And I am all of these things at once, and I'm not one more than the other, but I take pride in all of these things. And I think that for me, I find power in that insofar as when I look at this country, I think it is so damaging, right? So saddening that sometimes this country makes us choose.
I mean, what you point out is that we kind of all have a dual consciousness, or are dual citizens of this country and the world, which is to say we go home, we might have a different culture, a different food, a different language that we speak. We go to school and we have friends who might not share or understand what that language culture is. And we have a desire to both be true to the heritage, but then also be accepted, successful, and otherwise in the non-Asian American world that we live in. Assimilation. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it a burden? Is it an opportunity?
Assimilation, I think I would define that as, in part, I think necessary to an extent because we are forced to in order to navigate this country. So I would say learning the language, learning how to like properly behave, for example. That's in part kind of assimilation, making sure that you are
in line.
kosher in this society. And I think in part that means survival.
I think assimilation is not just a great thing, it's a necessary thing.
Huh.
No society can hold together where people have nothing in common, they don't speak the same language, they don't practice the same things. And you may look at something like just food habits or what you eat and think that's fairly frivolous, but the truth of the matter is that on a broader level, when we're talking about more big picture things, differences in race, culture, religion, all these things, people have fought wars, violent wars, killed each other over these things for thousands of years. If America is to hold together, assimilation, not just good or bad, necessary. I don't think it's going to be possible for America to survive as a stable, functioning society if people don't, to some degree, say, well, here's what we're going to commonly agree upon.
But who gets to choose it?
The majority culture, I suppose.
And what's
The people-
majority culture?
The people with power.
And who's people with power?
People with power.
White people.
Well, I don't know if that's...
White people.
I don't know if that's necessarily so true. I mean,
What do you mean?
Yeah.
How's that not true?
I don't
elaborate.
think, I don't think a particularly white, quote unquote, interest controls things like
In America.
pop culture.
Do you believe
Well, I
white
think-
supremacy exists?
I think there are people who believe in it. I think there's people who all believe that their race is superior.
So you don't believe in white supremacy?
Do you believe America is a white
believe in
supremacist state?
No. Not at all.
And not found
No white supremacist state would
Ooh. Ooh, he's so funny. Assimilation is, to me, I associate as a bad thing because to me, when I think of assimilation, it reminds me of becoming a part of that culture to a point where you lose your own. So when I think about it, especially in a Black sense, it's a very negative thing in my mind because that reminds me of like straightening your hair and thinking that like curly hair is nappy and it's ugly and it's disgusting, and trying to like rid your mind of all of this like conditioning that denies who you are and that says that who you are is disgusting, it's terrible, and that you should really be basically just white. And I think that's what she's getting at, is that who defines what assimilation is or what assimilating into America looks like? White people. And so they want you to basically, as a minority, you have to learn white people, you have to learn how they act, you have to learn how to act around them, what to say, how to speak. Whereas white people don't do that at all for us. They don't learn about why Asian Americans think the way they do, their culture, their food, why they, why culturally some things are significant to them. They don't do that for Black or brown people. They don't do that for anybody, but we have to do it for them. And so when I think about assimilation, that's what I think about. So I already knew this man was going to come with some BS about how white supremacy isn't real and how America isn't a violent state or whatever. I already knew because these conservatives, and he's about to get bodied too. Like, he's not even like one of those good conservatives. He's not even the conservatives who have like talking points and years of experience. He's just bad. So I'm ready for him to get bodied.
even like allow us to be doing this. Like I don't understand. So white supremacists, there's just KKK people walking. Actually, I go around New York City. I noticed that, like, I guess Brooklyn a little bit different. Most of the people here are not white, and they're doing their thing. So I don't understand.
What does doing their thing mean to you?
Going to work.
Are they making the same amount of money? Are they getting the same access to opportunities?
I think they're getting great access to opportunity.
Please unpack it. Are they equivalent? Are communities and communities that are leading culture, to your point, because you pointed to popular culture as something where, in your view, white people don't have the power, when the reality is it is the white executives who are profiting off of and exploiting predominantly black and brown bodies for their financial gain to then parade to us and tell us
I love
that
this
we're
man.
thriving.
Oh my God, I'm in love.
It is
I'm in
women of
love.
color, and it is black folks, and it is Asian American folks, and it is Hispanic folks, and it is people from marginalized communities who are disproportionately being impacted by every adverse thing that society is facing, while the few at the top who don't represent our communities, are profiting. There are massive disparities based on race, based on class, based on gender, based on all of these things that shouldn't exist.
Well, nobody denies that there's disparities or that.
Well, let's have Vince respond.
Or that I think the question is, do they exist because of supposed white supremacy? And when I look at the fact that, you know, virtually every corporation and institution bends the knee to diversity, celebrates every single Heritage Month.
That's a bad thing.
Has all these programs, every single one towed the line for Black Lives Matter. I don't look at that and say, I don't look at that and say conservative white people are in power in this country. As a matter of fact, I'd argue to a large extent, you can talk about, you know, what race or whatever people are, but is like a supposedly conservative white interest in power in America. I would honestly say I think it's the opposite of that.
I want to clarify one thing.
You're so funny.
You can be liberal and still a white supremacist, right?
Yes.
Like, I would be very clear,
Absolutely.
right? That it doesn't necessarily mean conservative white power is the predominant folks in power. I think it could span a lot of political ideologies and still have these things embedded in how you govern and how you lead and how you make decisions. However, when you talk about bending the knee, that is a wild way, I think, to look at society finally trying, in some ways, to right the wrongs of its
ills. It's not so
ills.
wild. I mean, even like your supposedly white politicians, you look at what they did in 2020, they quite literally bent the knee. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the entire Democrat, basically, caucus in Congress, literally bent the knee to George Floyd and to Black Lives Matter. Like, they quite literally did that.
And that was a bad thing?
I think it was a stupid thing.
Why?
I think it was just ridiculous pandering to a terrorist movement ran by
a terrorist movement.
Black lives do not matter.
I do think that Black Lives Matter. I don't support the movement known as Black Lives Matter.
You ever say all lives matter?
Of course. As a Christian, I absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let me put this back into some more concrete terms. So I guess to try to understand the conflict here that you guys are having, what role do you think Asian Americans have as far as the larger injustices and racism that this country has exhibited and has pushed it forward in the 200 years prior to even our arrival? But I guess the easiest way to make it something to talk about is the concept of the model minority myth. When you hear that word, what does it mean to you?
So the model minority myth, you know, after World War II, they used us to separate other people of color. They used our race to say that we were the best race, that we were the model minority because we were the smartest, we got the best jobs, we did these things, and we were able to assimilate to what their idea of what they wanted. They wanted an example to use of people of color that they could then use against all the other people of color. And what they also did is they caused infighting between our communities so that we wouldn't look at the actual problem, which was white supremacy. When I did the model minority myth, I grew up wanting to be white. I fucking hate that about myself. Like, it is so embarrassing.
Okay, so
I have that same thing too.
That Asians, right, on average, make more money, in terms of medium, make more money, better test scores, get into better colleges, all that stuff. I think the question is, why is that? And I don't know, model minority, whatever that label wants to mean.
That's actually a myth because we cannot be...
Well, no, listen, let me finish my point. We need to observe what makes people successful and unsuccessful. And I think when you look at trends that are generally true in the Asian community, not of everyone, but are generally true, usually you have families that are sticking together. You have, you know, people are taught to work hard in school, not get into trouble. I think that translates to why Asians en masse are successful. And I don't think you have to be Asian or white, for that matter, to not have kids out of wedlock, not, you know, commit crime, not cause trouble, whatever it is. It's just a matter of, like, well, common sense. That's what makes people successful. And if that's so-called assimilation, having a nuclear family, buying a house, going to school, whatever it is, then yeah, okay, call me a pro-assimilation then.
I think there's a difference between assimilation and erasure.
Yes.
The way that you're kind of going about it seems like, okay, like, you know, of course, like, we want to be in community with people. And I don't think there's a problem with being in community with people from different backgrounds. That's not the issue. It's also embracing the diversity that we inherently have and accepting that and being okay with that and celebrating that.
That's very idealistic, I think, but I think we should acknowledge the fact that diversity, quote unquote, is not a factor that is our strength. It's not a factor that historically or even in the current strengthens societies. People don't come together, form societies, form families, form communities because they have nothing in common. They come together and do those things because they have something in common, right?
You talk about race in such black and white terms. The way you talk about it is it's either with America, whatever your definition of America, or not. You're talking in very black and white terms, and that's actually the problem in discussing race, because we're Asian Americans, we're neither black, we're neither white. When you're having a race discussion, you can't be talking about in such like lines. Yeah. Everything is in the gray.
The more in common that a society has with one another, the more likely they are to work together and build things in society and not constantly be fighting each other and at odds with each other.
Did you think the Japanese internment was a good thing? Because that was a real assimilation situation. You know what I mean?
No, I
Do you recognize
don't.
that the term assimilation has negative history?
Yes,
and
yes.
associated with that word. So we do have to be careful in how we choose, because assimilation for people of color have not been good to us historically. That's factual. So let me ask you.
We're discussing the model minority myth and the fact that
Japanese internment is a classic example of assimilating Asian Americans.
No,
so
it's not. It's a classic example of internment. I mean, they intern people.
Why?
Yes.
Why did they intern them? Because they saw them as other. Because they saw them as dangerous.
Not really. Well, yes, they saw them as dangerous because, and I don't agree with it, but left-wing president FDR at the time saw it as a national security risk.
So you're a Republican, right? You're right-wing, right?
I want to make sure that we move this way to keep talking about it. And thank you for all the passion on this. And I think there's a lot to unpack. Joyce, tell me about your feelings about the model minority myth. What does it make you think about?
For me, like, I don't think race should be an issue in anything. Like, when we want to make a decision, we should not put race as a factor. Living in New York City, we're the melting pot of the world, so I haven't actually experienced any of these biases. And if we keep continuing to live on, remembering how history was, we're never going to move further. So I identify myself as American, and in this country, it's the only country where a homeless person can be a millionaire the next day. So
that's not true at all.
We all have an opportunity.
No, I'm so sorry. That's not how this works. That's not how this works.
Depriving ourselves of opportunities.
I have a question directly related to the fact that you live in New York, right?
Yeah.
And you're an Asian woman. There have been significant high crimes towards Asian women that were all over the news. Did that affect you? And what were your thoughts on that?
The government is telling us that it's Asian hate, but that's not the real issue. The real issue is actually that these people were mentally ill and they were let out.
Or both can be the issue, right?
Yeah,
it can simultaneously exist as issues.
You can't say that it's Asian hate and use that as propaganda.
Propaganda?
I feel like also to just say that these people are mentally ill is a kind of an ableist argument too, because there's plenty of people who are mentally ill.
Don't do that.
Going out and killing Asian people on the street.
All these attacks that you're seeing the videos of in San Francisco, New York City, newsflash, they're not being prosecuted as hate crimes. So the more correct way to look at it is what is the primary perpetrator of violence against Asians overall, right? Because if we talk about these videos, we have to count them in the statistics, and we're not doing that. And when we do that, we find, well, I'll tell you this, the plurality top perpetrator of violence against Asians, number one, is not happening in rural America, and number two, is not being done by white people.
So is it black people that are doing it? Like, is it the black and
But yeah, like, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
Inherently violent? Like,
just say it.
I didn't say
just
that.
Say it. Just say it.
If it's not white people or Asian people, who is it?
All I said, I didn't say anything about, inherently violent. All I said is that if it's
now you did.
If it's
no one accused you of that, and now you did.
If it's a white...
So, like, your bias is slipping out there.
It's slipping out.
Can anyone let me talk?
When it comes to Asian hate, the perpetrator is not a white supremacist in New York.
Correct. That's all I'm saying.
How?
That's the
all that I'm
problem.
saying.
Like, we don't want to blame one race for violence when that's actually not true.
Is it white people? Is it white people?
It is white people.
It is white people.
I literally looked up statistics.
You do not have to be white to perpetuate white supremacy.
Yes, you don't have to be. Literally, the people, it was probably a few months ago, the attacks during Lunar New Year, that was done by like Asian people. But those Asian people probably have a lot of white supremacist ideals, probably have a lot of pent up hate against themselves, like, to do that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to be white to perpetuate white supremacy. Black people do it all the freaking time. Asian people do it all the time. They perpetuate the ideals and the ideology that comes with white supremacy because they've been conditioned to think that's the superior way of thinking. Dumbass.
But it is possible to do a lot better than the way that we're fucking doing it right now. It's like we've banked on this myth of white adjacency more than this model minority myth of like, instead of aligning ourselves with the Black community who've been fighting for racial justice and liberation, right, and acknowledging our own privilege and putting our bodies on the line to fight for these movements, instead we banked on white adjacency, and here we are still being
First of all, what exactly is white adjacency? Is it working hard, having families?
I don't
understand what the issue is.
He just said white adjacency is working hard, having families. This man is a literal white supremacist. Yeah, because other people can't do that. That's what being white means. It's definitely not like racist. I don't know, like, what is whiteness? I don't even know. Like, what does it mean to be white? Because all I can think of is racism. That's all I got. Because guess what? Minorities have families too. They work way harder, okay, and get paid way less. You know what I'm saying? Like, people that aren't even documented in this country work way harder than probably most white people. So I don't even know what the freak you're talking about. And that is some white supremacy stuff, because I believe there's a statistic that says that, like, white people think that they work harder than, like, Black people or minorities. Like, he's literally spouting white supremacy. You're an example of it. You're the example. There we go.
Wait, let me finish my point. I think it is gaslighting when, again, the majority of violent attacks against Asians are not being perpetrated by white people to blame white supremacy.
White supremacy as a construct is this idea, like, that the norm of American is whiteness.
Yes.
That whiteness is the default.
Standard.
That whiteness is the standard that we all ought to aspire to. And we
It's not just talking about KKK.
Yeah.
It's not talking about lynchings. It's about a mentality
Yes.
that we have absorbed.
I'm gonna interrupt for a second. Yuling, what's going through your head right now?
Model minority myth, if I'm not wrong, I actually think that Asian Americans did create that first and foremost to push the notion that we are dangerous away. First to say that, like, no, we belong here because I promise you we will not cause harm to you. And that has trickled down now into becoming almost a curse. Historically was used first to be like, we're not dangerous, we're American, we are American. But later on it has moved into this sort of weaponized term slash almost like idea concept where we get to say, like, oh, because we are model minority, like, we're not, like, dangerous and we're not this. And I think about this a lot with class, like, a lot of Asian women who are sex workers. Who are we actually taking into account when we think about model minority? And I think that that term really applies to a very specific amount, or that idea of what that looks like is very specific. Because when I think of the Asian Americans that I know, I don't think that they're worried about whether or not they look like model minority. I think they're just trying to survive.
Vish, I see you percolating over there. What's going through your brain?
I don't understand why everybody's so hurt about, like, being described as a model minority. For me, it's like, well, I want to be the best. I want to be the smartest. I want to be the toughest. The model minority thing, I've never thought about it because I'm too focused on trying to be a model American.
When I say
I think the model minority myth is also really dangerous to, like, people that can't live up to that. You know what I'm saying? Like, people that can't get the good grades, can't be the great student, can't be the hard worker or whatever. Like, if you can't become whatever that is that looks like, then you probably, like, hate yourself. Like, it's just setting the standard for what you have to be. And I don't know, that just seems like a very dangerous mentality to put on people, that they have to be this thing, this, like, this great thing. Like, everybody can't do that, you know? And everybody can be that. And that might be what Yuling was trying to say. Is that, like, everybody everybody can't be that. That's not what everybody looks like. That's not what everybody's meant to be, you know? It's just, I don't know. It's dangerous in that aspect too.
Stop Asian hate. What does it mean to you?
Scam.
I agree.
Why?
I see it as the same way as the BLM organization. It's just a cudgel meant to divide Americans on racialized language and racialized ideas that are not really congruent with reality. The Stop Asian
Girl, what you
Hate
talking
movement,
about?
you know, makes a big fuss about white supremacy. So I find that to be a scam in a similar way that BLM makes a boogeyman out of cops and white people and white supremacy and all that. It's all the same language and all the same sort of ideas that are being used to divide.
My guy, 1,000 people have gotten killed by the police since like 2001. That's over 20,000 people that have been killed by police. And I believe if you look up like mapping police violence, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are actually the top demographic that get killed by the police. Let's look it up right now, in fact. I want to see. Because every time I go to the website, I'm like, well, that's actually kind of interesting. Yes, look at this. It says black people are 2.9 times more likely to be killed by police than white people. And then if you look at like the top, oh my God, when you look at the top, you know, situations, it's Pacific Islanders who are killed the most. So people a part of your demographic, I mean, he's Indian, but people a part of the demographic that is sitting up there with you are being killed. 96 people. So girl, what you talking about? White supremacy affects everyone. I mean, we present it as a black issue, of course, but this is obviously like killing Native American people, killing brown people, other brown people. Like, girl, what you talking about? That's without talking about like the Asian hate that has been going on for years as well. Girl, let's look that up too. I'm curious. Oh, what is this? Freaking NBC. What is this? Oh, what is this? Asian hate crimes increased 339. I was not expecting that. 339% nationwide last year. I'm sorry, what? The report also points out that Black Americans remain the most targeted group in terms of hate crimes. 339%. I'm sorry, that is literally wild. That is so wild that he sat up there and said, this is a cudgel created to make white supremacy look bad or something. I don't know. Like, what is he talking about? I feel like conservatives like don't read anything. They don't. I mean, I already talked about this. Like, conservatives don't need stats. All they need is a mouth to talk about nothing.
Americans and basically put Asians in fear of something that I personally do not think exists.
Who agrees with Vish?
No, I don't.
Raise your hands up high. Let's hear it. Why?
I mean, I agree with everything he says because they're basically weaponizing.
I thought better of her.
Making us
I really
victims,
did.
but we're not victims. We have friends that are of different races. If you start to use the word hate, hate will continue. Hate is a very strong word.
No, that's not how it works.
Asian hate. You're still like, wait, it has Asian hate in here, and we should not even consider it.
Even the host is clowning on her. Even the host is like, oh, so even if it says stop, like you're against. Even he's clowning on her. What the frick? No, acknowledging the fact that there's hate does not increase more hate. It acknowledges it, which is something that America and Americans are literally allergic to, is acknowledging any form of hate or racism or systemic problems at all. When they see it, they break out in hives. They fall and die. Like they're literally deathly allergic to it. And she's a victim of it. That's really sad. I thought better.
Well, it's referring to murders, people getting attacked in broad daylight, elders getting bashed in the head I fear for my mother-in-law going on walks. I ask her to make sure she's not walking around when it's getting dark. So it's very real. Getting murdered for being Asian is as hateful as it gets, is it not? Why are we afraid to just say out loud, let's stop Asian hate? It is happening in astronomical numbers. Studies have shown the increase. And where did it come from? Right after the COVID blast of people saying, oh, it's the
China
Chinese
virus.
There was a direct correlation to that Asian hate. It just didn't, it didn't come out of thin air. So it really minimizes our experiences when you say it doesn't exist.
Here's a radical idea. Okay, you guys ready?
No, I'm not.
So there's a lot of violence happening. A lot of it's against Asian people. A lot of it is happening in cities. Crazy idea, I know. Then maybe it's not a good idea to let criminals out of jail. Maybe it's not a good idea to defund the police.
Who the freak is doing that? I want to know who's doing any of that.
Streets. And maybe you wouldn't have so much violence happening against...
Baby. America imprisons the most people. So who was letting someone out of prison? Who was doing that? Who? I want to know who was doing that. I want to know who decided to actually change the script and actually rehabilitate people for once. Who was doing that when we live in a fucking police state? Who is letting people out of prison when we imprison the most people, have the most prisons? Who? Oh, what is he talking about?
Vulnerable people. I mean, this is just the truth of the situation. You know, we can talk about this correlation with COVID. Maybe that's true to an extent. It's also true that
maybe that's true to an extent. What do you mean?
Because it's also true that it's been climbing over the past year or two, whatever. That's also around the same time that we had all of these, you know, anti-police movements. A lot of
But it's also around the same time that Donald Trump was calling it the China virus, right?
Well, he's not calling it anymore.
Literally,
and it looks like this stuff is still happening. Problem with saying stop Asian hate, just saying stigma, whatever.
The host is bodying him.
The real core of the problem is that there is lawlessness and mass violence and mass crime happening in cities. I think
literally crime is down. Crime is down in the United States. What is he talking about?
This argument of like minorities being persecuted when I don't think that's the core of the problem. I think the core of the problem is like it's just dangerous in our cities.
Originally, when you asked what stop Asian hate means to you, the first word that popped in my mind was ignorance. It goes beyond more than the way that people were just
I knew he would be good.
And attacking people. Some people were avoiding.
He fine as hell. I already knew he would be good.
Like, oh no, you can't go over to that house because they're Asian, they're Japanese, they're Chinese. So that also is a version of hate.
I already knew.
Into like the specifics of like crime, there was even just social injustices, and that is one of the things that I think that people might overlook.
Yes, it's an ideology, babe.
Stop Asian hate. The reason why I feel like it falls short is not because of the sentiment. I think that there is definitely prejudice and absolutely like hate against Asians in this country. But I think sometimes that we view that violence very like specific, like I'm gonna beat you up because you're Asian, and like that is the violence. And I think sometimes like on a larger scale, that violence also shows up in ways in which like housing, education, healthcare, a lot of that.
So now, let's move on to the main event, because a lot of what's behind the disagreements that we're having today seems to be related to politics. How many of you here would say that you're progressive or liberal? Raise of hands. And how many would say conservative or not progressive and liberal? Undecided? Okay. Are Asians invisible in American politics? Are they visible?
Did he say undecided?
And how many would say conservative or not progressive and liberal? Undecided? Okay. Are Asians invisible in American politics? Are they visible? Do Asian Americans
sir,
have
I'm
political
side-eyeing
power? Let's
you,
take
but
visibility.
Not visible enough. But that is a consequence of the mentality towards politics for a lot of Asians. You don't participate in the system, nobody's gonna care what you have to say, period. Which is why I've made it a point to participate in the system. You know, I don't go around saying, well, I'm Asian, that's why I deserve to be here. But just me being in the room is a step above what's kind of the sort of awareness, the political
so you
awareness
acknowledge that
specifically the Indian community, in my opinion. You know, that's been my experience. So I don't think that they're visible enough. And the reason they're not visible is because they don't participate and do.
Wait, but I thought the whole thing is that you thought like Asians were equal.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that in terms of, I think it's more than that. But I do agree as lack of engagement or, claiming to be apolitical. I think when Kamala became vice president, there wasn't really that much support that I saw from the Asian community. And she's our first Asian American woman to be elected in such a high position of office.
But she is? She's Asian?
Just because she may not look a specific way.
So what
She's
you're saying
Asian?
is that the broader Asian American community, which might include East Asians and otherwise, didn't speak up enough for having a South Asian person like Kamala Harris of mixed race become vice president of the United States. So divisions within itself.
Yes. Like, I did not see very many East Asians come out and be like, Asian American representation. But I saw plenty of Black people come out and be like, Black representation. So there is definitely a lot of divisiveness within our own communities that we need to understand and recognize. Being Asian is not just being East Asian.
Maybe Asians didn't feel represented by Kamala Harris. Maybe people just don't like Kamala Harris. Like, she's one of the least popular vice presidents, I believe, in recent history. I don't know if it's like an Asian exclusive thing. I just think a lot of people were not a fan.
Why don't you think they like her?
She comes off as obnoxious and pretentious, and they don't like her politics.
Can I piggyback off that? I think
I
Kamala
wonder.
Harris
I feel like
does
it's probably
not
because
get
she's
the
Black.
love
But
from the Asian community because she picks and chooses when she wants to be whatever her identity is. When she's on TV, on camera, I'm a Black woman, blah, 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 blah. But she only claims her Indian and Asian background when she's in the fundraisers with the rich Indians. She's doing it to herself. She's dividing her identity.
No, maybe she's just both.
Playing up, code switching. I know AOC likes to use the word code switching. Code switching to the Black community when she's on camera, and then code switching to the Asian community when she's raising money. Don't be surprised if, you only come around when you're asking for a check.
No, I don't. I mean, Kamala's boring, but still.
We're not in the streets, as hard as you would like us to be. But then again, you don't go on camera wearing a dot on your head and the jasmine in your hair, right?
She doesn't have to do that. You're insane. She doesn't have to do that.
Right? When was the last time? I've seen Justin Trudeau wearing Indian clothes before her. You know what I mean? So don't give me the nonsense, right? Like, it's her fault that Asians don't
she has to do that in order for people to acknowledge the fact that she's Indian. The only way for her to do that is if she wears like Indian clothes. Huh? Because I don't think you do that on a regular basis, but yeah, you're still Indian. It's a little weird. I don't know.
For her trying to win over people, do you think that maybe as a choice to not represent that, to be more relatable to the masses, could be the reason why she acts the way that she acts? I don't know.
Are you saying Asians are not relatable to the American public?
Yes, to some, yeah. No, to some. Being in a position where you have this generalization of how a standard American is supposed to be, and then all of a sudden, depending on the social climate, there is a lot of pressure on people to be a specific person, and so when you're someone in that light,
he thought he owned him too.
Get support.
He turned around and he said, "Oh, so do you think that Asians aren't relatable?" He really thought he owned him, and then he was like, "Yeah, I don't." He really thought he got him with that one.
From people, not even saying that she's right or wrong. I'm just saying that could possibly be a motive.
She did it to herself. If you just called yourself American, you wouldn't be in this mess, right? But
but she's not just American.
You switch the identity based on the need.
She's not just American.
That is the problem.
I think Kamala exists.
It's politically
and
expedient.
You kind of saw this when Biden chose her. She exists to basically appeal to like the woke diversity mob. Like, that's the truth. Biden said, I'm gonna pick a woman, and then he said, I'm gonna pick a woman of color, quote unquote, ended up with Kamala Harris. And I just think that a lot of people outside of Ivy League educations find that stuff off-putting. In general America, a lot of people of all different colors are very off-put by her entire political presentation in existence because they're off-put by the
women,
diversity,
Black
liberal.
people, a woman in leadership. I want to chime in here.
Apparently,
he said
even
women.
like women of color and Black women, even like
Just as we
her
talked about.
approval rating in general sucks.
I agree.
Why? Because
Let's get off the approval rating for a second. I want to hold on one point of yours, which is
Okay.
she's a token. That's what I heard from you.
Sure. I think Biden chose her absolutely as a token.
So I want to know how you respond to sort of what Vince was saying, that Kamala Harris effectively was a token pick because demographic boxes, and specifically an Asian American demographic box.
I feel like anytime a person of color gets chosen, we're looked at as a token. especially in institutions, it's historical. Like, it's new to us, right? So in one sense, there's some truth to it. Even in our own communities, I think, is she a token? Like, we second guess ourselves. You start to second guess, are you worth it? Because you're constantly being questioned.
Qualified?
Did you get here because you were diversity hire, or, this is the existence that we live in right now. And so Kamala Harris is actually very representative of what we face. You can say token all day long, but you can't take that away.
People will scrutinize her. However, what about the other people, other 47 presidents who've definitely done their fair share? I'd say probably worse things.
Yes, absolutely.
Who are not nitpicked for what they are wearing, or, like maybe not fitting in enough, because they already fit in.
Or for being white.
Yeah.
Yet another white person.
Yeah, like, a lot of people don't agree with, her politics. And, like, I don't want to take, like, her credentials away.
Yeah.
Because she earned it. She wasn't just a diversity pick. She was picked because she also
put in the work.
She also put in the work.
I'd like to hear from the women in the panel about the specifics that we're talking about, because not only is she the first Black and Asian American vice president, she's also the first woman. Choice.
I disagree with Kamala's politics, I'll say it, but at the same time, she's representative of a woman, and I think we should give her some award for that. Like,
credit?
I like credit, yes, that's the word I was looking for. This is my point exactly with plain identity politics. Like, who cares if she's Black? Who cares if she's a woman? Like, if she got there on her own merit, that's what's important.
Yulin?
I haven't really thought too much about her being a token so much. I think I'm more interested in, well, what will you do now that you're in office? Will things still change, or is it
what would that
optics?
look like?
Yeah, and it's great because obviously you do want the optics. You do hope, and you put a lot of that pressure on that person who you feel might represent you. If I wanted to talk really about representation, I'd be like, put somebody poor up there. I don't want anybody rich running the government. Sorry, like, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, what's the pulse on your country?
I agree.
So that's what I'm interested in.
Let's talk about higher education and affirmative action. So I think a lot of our conversation, the rubber hits the road on this topic. And because plaintiffs challenging affirmative action rules, there are Asian Americans who are banding together to do that.
I think affirmative action is a scam. It's an excuse to make race-based hiring decisions. And I think that that's wrong. And I think that everything should be based on merit.
The students that are picked by affirmative action are top-tier students.
Yeah.
They're not like some D+ students
Yeah, they
that
align
are
with
picked just based on race. They already are performing at a very top level themselves and proven themselves to be picked.
Despite systemic barriers.
I think to a reasonable extent, you could say, okay, if someone grew up in like total poverty and they didn't have the same opportunities, then you can lower the standard a little bit. What I would still say is I think there has to be some proof still of capability. Right now, there's a left-wing movement to remove SAT and standardized testing. So in my opinion, sure, the SAT may not be a perfect test. I think it's decent. That is what actually levels the playing field, is saying we have to take the same test. It doesn't matter what your teacher, how hard they grade, you pay them off, private school education, that's the environment where it's like totally even.
Sure, it's one way to measure intelligence, but that's also assuming that intelligence can only be assessed in one way. How do you compare someone who is just as smart, or, maybe even if they didn't get the SAT score, as like their classmate who literally paid a tutor for 4 years.
Every single day, yep.
Versus this person, they took the test twice in their life, and then they put a bunch of their savings into paying for the test.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to compare these people and say that one is more deserving?
So I think
I've gone I don't mean to brag, but I've gotten like straight A's all my life, 4.0 in high school. And I sucked at the SAT. Sucked at it. Absolutely sucked at it. So I don't really think that that's necessarily a good determining factor of whether you get to have higher education. I'm also just of the belief that everybody should have higher education, whether they're smart or not. Like, I don't really think that should be a determining factor of whether someone gets higher education, especially when higher education is like a barrier to getting a good job. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of messed up to be like, oh, not only are you poor, but you're dumb, and so you just get to be that way all your life. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't even get to have a good job, have a good life. We're just gonna keep you here. And that's what getting rid of affirmative action says to me, because there is a correlation between poverty and race, because brown and black people don't always get the best education, the best opportunities. As I just pointed out, you know, white people can pay for tutors for 4 years or whatever, whereas a freaking black person like Chicago is struggling to pay for the test in the first place. You know, like, there's a barrier of entry that comes with this stuff. And like I said, I'm just of the belief that everybody should get to go in the first place, whether you're smart or not. You know, like, everybody should be educated whether they're smart or not. I don't know. Is that weird? I don't think it is.
I feel like we need to improve our local schools. Not every school is the same. Like, if you're in a poor community, you don't have the best teachers. So we want to hold all the teachers accountable for giving top grade education, so everybody's leveled. And then
Yes.
it wouldn't matter which race or socioeconomic position that you're taking.
She's right on
don't
that.
agree with like getting rid of affirmative action altogether. I think it needs reform.
What about like legacy kids? I think that it's great.
Oh my God, Yuling is so
take
good.
into account, you know, the systems in power that have intentionally made sure that certain people, and specifically black and brown people, cannot have access to education. I think that's a great way to try to level that playing field at the least. If a kid
we
can
don't
get
see
in,
a fuss being made about legacy kids. Ever.
Exactly, and that's the issue.
Exactly, it's that like people get a lot more up in arms, I would say, when it's like, oh, well, so you just got in because of your, you know, race.
What do you think the future of Asian Americans in America and American politics is?
The paradigm we are going through now, especially with our relations with different ethnic groups and everything, I think that we are headed towards balkanization, and the future of America is starting to look like Bosnia. And so I want to avoid that.
You know, within our generation, at least what I've seen, a lot more Asian Americans who are interested in politics, who are interested in bringing more representation and bringing more, saying like, we've had enough. You know, this is not how we need to be treated, how we deserve to be treated. So like, I think in terms of involvement, there will be a higher involvement of Asian Americans. And also just the mere fact that we had Asian American representation, whether it's Kamala or Andrew Yang just even running, that shows people that, hey, like maybe that could be me.
Yeah, I'm allowed. I think that one of the biggest things that representation does is it says, I'm allowed to do that because I see someone that looks like me do that.
Yeah.
Period.
And I think just exactly what you said is that, you know, with Black Lives Matter, Asian hate, we learned that if we work together as people of color,
Yes.
and that's where I think,
Yes.
that's what it means to me, is that we as a group working together get more done.
Yeah.
And that if we support each
Yes.
other and we do this, we can get more of ourselves up there.
I think
Yes,
you will
individualism
definitely see
doesn't get us
some people
anywhere.
actually move to the right because of that. How big will it be? I don't really know. Probably not as big as a lot of Republicans hope, but I think it will happen.
What do I think about?
I actually hope with all of the, you know, circulation of politics, that I think Asian people tend to be more conservative, but I'm actually hoping, I don't really know if this is true or not, but I really hope that because we have so much more of an awareness of politics and what's really going on, especially with the Asian hate thing, like how people are actually being treated. There's so much more information out there. I really hope that means that Asian people actually become more progressive. And I feel like that's what's happening, but I don't know. I really hope everyone, obviously, I really hope everyone becomes more progressive, because I think most cultures and most people come probably from conservative backgrounds. I feel like we're seeing a lot of people, like even when I went to college, I saw there were so many people in my classes who were kind of leaning towards like anti-capitalism, which I thought was so weird. And I was so surprised by that, because that's such an unpopular opinion to have, that like capitalism is bad and everything you've been taught is wrong and actually hurts you in life. Because we've been obviously taught about the American dream and stuff. So I was super surprised to see, and that's a super progressive thing to think, that like basically teetering on the edge of socialism, like that's, so I was really surprised about that. So I don't know. I hope that everyone, especially that comes from more progressive or conservative backgrounds, is starting to become more progressive. And I feel like that's what's happening. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm gonna be hopeful because I think that oftentimes, like, we are characterized as just angry, right? And that our politic isn't, and that our politic isn't
that
rooted.
Makes me angry.
Yeah. But and our politic isn't rooted in love and isn't rooted in community, isn't rooted in hope, and I hope that it is, right?
It is.
So what I'm
it
hopeful
is.
about is that we can sit here and name politicians who look like us and sound like us. And that wasn't the case when I was a kid. I didn't think that that was possible. So from where I'm sitting, like, I think
literally
the
love
future
him.
of Asian American leadership looks like telling our own stories in community with other people who haven't had their stories told yet.
He's literally beautiful. Like, I love
sort of
him.
the agitation within our own communities. I think just like with movements and like being tired of staying silent. I think that's part of going back to also that model minority myth of like, I'm gonna mind my business, I'm just gonna do my thing, and you guys just fight it out over there. You know, I think that like seeing the passion kind of jump out is very beautiful to witness. And so hopefully I think that the future, at least that I envision, is one where we can maybe see more humanity in each other. I think that as an Asian American, a lot of how I've viewed myself has been through a lens of self-hatred and shame. With the moment that we're in right now, even this conversation that we've been able to have, I think that the difference that I hopefully feel is that we're not gonna sit on the sidelines and be like, that's not my business. I think now we're ready to be like, that is my business, and I'm gonna be vocal about it. So I don't know what that looks like in the future, but I think that my hope is that it looks more like community care.
You know, white children in this country grew up with the mentality, I can be president one day. We didn't have that. and we're just now like, oh, could it be us? What I hear a lot in your reasons for being Republican or thinking the way you do is that you don't want to be seen as a victim. I see that, I hear that very loud and clear. And it's rooted in kind of that logic that pits you against yourself.
Yes, self-hatred.
You constantly walk around with this idea, I'm not a victim. But it doesn't just end with you. We are people that come from community. One of the things, even though we are not a monolith, a lot of our cultures can unite in the fact that we believe in community. And I know when people, you know, when we talk as passionately as we do, it sounds like we're complaining to some people, but we have seen progress and we know it's possible. So yes, we are hopeful that our children can even have it better than us.
To your point, you said, you know, you feel like in some situations I'm pitted against myself. You're 100% right. I am my #1 competition. And I'm going to win because I am the representation.
I don't doubt that you're gonna win.
The conversation about representation, I gotta see somebody who looks like me in order for me to believe. No, I am that guy. I am gonna put.
Not everybody has your
gonna put
beliefs.
myself
I
there,
love
right?
that you
Like
have
that. Like I'm gonna be that representation. I'm that representation every day.
Guess what, guys? We were all that representation today. So thank you.
I don't know about all that. I don't know about all that.
For the passionate responses. You're gonna get a bunch of us in the room together. We're not gonna agree. That's just how it is.
Yes.
So, appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, it is just sad.
You just slayed.
I'm just talking.
No, you slayed. I almost.
It was definitely a ride, you know, with some ups and some lows.
Fun, interesting, kind of spicy.
I was surprised by the Stop Asian hate. Quite a few people who were like, it's not a thing.
I did disagree with almost everything that they said. I also have found it hard to believe that people think that Black Lives Matter is looked at in some way as fake.
I have zero regrets.
A lot of Asians in the community actually support Trump because he promotes meritocracy.
Love Donald Trump.
Meritocracy. Can I say that again?
He's from Queens, I'm from Staten Island.
Meritocracy.
We're basically paisans.
I think the term Asian Americans should be erased.
Asian Americans are awesome.
Closing thought on Asian American as a term. It is as creative, open, and complicated as we decide to make it. And we can. So.
I love that. That was so great. Liberal Latinos debate oh, that's gonna be good. You already know. You already know it's gonna be good. I love this so much. So good, so good. But I really want to do this video because I feel like even though I'm not Asian, minorities kind of have the same like base struggle. Like we have the same, like when they were talking about self-hatred and stuff, like I can identify with that. Like I can feel that, like, because I grew up wanting subconsciously, like, maybe I wasn't like super aware that I wasn't like outright like, oh, I want to be white, but I wanted to appeal to them in some way, and I didn't like that. You know, I can identify with that, like the self-hatred aspect. So there's a lot of things that they talked about, even though I'm not Asian, that there's a lot of crossover. And I think that happens a lot of times because they were talking about Black Lives Matter, like, and they're not black, you know, like we're all a part of the same struggle. Like, they're white people, white supremacy, it's all the same, essentially. Like, they're doing the same things to us. They may use us in different ways, like with the mall minority myth, to make it look like, oh, Asians are better and pit us against each other. Because I do think that in some ways, sometimes Asian people and Black people don't like each other, but I'm hoping that's starting to change, and that we're starting to rewrite the ways that we view each other and the ways that they have pitted us against each other for years. And we're starting, like they said, to create a community. Because what I love about progressivism and socialism and all of that is that it's based off of love, it's based off of community, it's based off of collectivism, which is a part of like Asian culture that I think works really well, is coming together as a community and saying that we're going to work together for the benefit of us all. And I think the thing I hate about America the most, or one of the things I hate about it the most, there's so many things, but is individualism. Working as one, you get nowhere if you just work by yourself. Like, if you think about your success as a human being, you didn't just get there by yourself. You had to use other people, or not use other people, but get other people to help you to get where you got. Like, you didn't just get there on your own. Somebody else was a part of your success too. It's not just your success. So I think viewing it on such an individual basis is just, it's not healthy, and it doesn't get us anywhere. And I think obviously we have shown as a community, hopefully as a country, that whenever minorities come together, we are the strongest. As he said, as one of the people said, is whenever we come together, we get stuff done, you know? So obviously I'm honestly surprised that Vice didn't have more conservatives, because typically on those videos they have like, most of them are conservative, and then there's only a few progressive people. So I was surprised to see, like, what was it, 7 progressive people and then 3 conservative people. That was really surprising. And honestly, the conservatives just, maybe it's just because I'm progressive, but they looked really bad in this. Like, sometimes conservatives can come off as like charming and like they know what they're talking about, but they weren't as prepared, I don't think. Because that one dude in the suit was getting bodied. And I think that the Indian guy just looked kind of crazy. He looked a little insane to me, but maybe that's just me. I'm sure somebody agrees with him. But he just, like, especially, I don't know what the frig type of spell he was saying at the end. Volcanism, and I don't know what the frick he was saying. He was like, America is going towards volcanism. Like, what the frick was he talking about? I don't know. But anyways, Yu Ling, follow her on Instagram. She ate it up. She ate it up, and I already knew that she would. She was talking about, I want poor people to be president. I was like, yes. And especially the purple haired girl and the dude on the left, I don't know. They ate it up. No. Oh, I keep hitting my mic. Nom. They ate it right up. They were so good. I love that man so much. I wonder if he has an Instagram. He was amazing. Freaking amazing. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.